So food, it's a big problem. There's issues with food. There's been a whole bunch of things blown up. Food plants, egg plants. Eggs are causing blood clots now. There's all sorts of things happening with food all across the world. The Dutch farmers, the 30% reduction in fertilizer there has caused protests. They want to buy 3,000 farms from people. There's all sorts of stuff happening with food all over the place. And this Ohio derailment, tying in with that theme. And what's happening here is a big, big deal. It's a big, big deal. It's massive. I don't want to be fear-mongering or anything to that effect. And probably what will happen is the wind will blow it out to the ocean, and the impact will be held to maybe Ohio, maybe the towns, maybe 100-mile radius. If it's a 200-mile radius, like I said, I'm involved in that. That's 200 miles. I'm 200 miles from this. So I don't know what kind of impact that is. It looks like potentially a 200-mile radius or 250-mile, because that's the way the water flows in the U.S., is impacted their water systems. And that's not good. And I mean, well, let's get to it. Media is used sometimes to communicate plans. And there was a Chris Pine and Sam Jackson movie called Unstoppable, about a train, and it was a historical movie. It was about a train derailment that was averted by Sam Jackson and Chris and Captain Kirk, right? Obviously, and in real life it happened, and these guys actually stopped the train from derailing in a very populated area of I think maybe Ohio actually too. But the movie was great. And do I think that was signaling to have a train derailment? Probably not, right? Do I think White Noise is signaling to have a train derailment? I don't know. I haven't watched it. It's very interesting. Here's Mike, and he says, how insane is it that a movie called White Noise 2022 comes out, and the premise is that a train derails in Ohio, creating a toxic cloud that forces people to evacuate. Then months later, the exact line of events happens. A bellowing toxic cloud in Ohio with very little media. So it's interesting. I don't know if it's art mimicking life. Coincidence? Do you believe in coincidence still? Or happenstance or what? I have no idea, but it did happen. Movie was released, then train derailment, right? Train derailments happen all the time, right? Could you just be seeing patterns in clouds, right? Like, oh, that looks like a deck of cards. That looks like an elephant, right? The cloud's not trying to look like an elephant. It's just is. Here's, I can't say it. Eldon says, vinyl chloride becomes phosphine. I'm saying that terribly wrong. And hydrogen chloride when you burn it. The first one was used as mustard gas in World War I. And hydrogen chloride is a major irritant of the skin, lungs, eyes. It's pretty toxic. The U.S. just mustard gassed Ohio. And the mustard gas is unsafe at 0.2 ppm after 15 minutes. And you can see this billowing cloud of this gas, and reading the descriptions of mustard gas is just terrible. But I wanted to see if there was an impact, or if mustard gas just left the place that it was mustard gassed and then everything grew back and everything was fine, right? I mean, probably after a few years, but is it like the same year that everything grows back? Could you grow food in a mustard gassed field? Could you? Do you think? I don't know. Here's PubMed, and it says the effect of mustard gas on the biological activity of soil. I thought this was probably worth the read. The abstract says, a special group of substances that are very dangerous for the biosphere include war gases such as mustard gas, and this is sulfide, Bis-2, see, I'm terrible at reading, but it's got sulfide in there. I don't know if these are exactly the same. If they're analogous, if they rhyme, similar, but not exactly the same. Chemistry is tricky, right? But these guys are saying this is very, very toxic, and lots of everything is dead. The frogs, fish, everything is dead. So some pets, cattle, dead. So I don't know if this is exactly mustard gas, but I think it probably maps okay. The influence of mustard gas products on soil microbiota has been investigated. These substances bear numerous toxic effects on soil microorganisms. They change significantly the number and the specific composition of soil microbiota and inhibit the enzyme activity of soils. The main ecological targets of mustard gas and its hydrolysis products' toxic action have been determined. MGHPs affect the growth and reproduction of soil microites, as well as their morphological and cultural properties. Increase in number and size of mitochondria in the fungal cells is accompanied by increase in dehydrogenase activity. Cells permeability influenced by MGHPs grows in connection with concentration of toxins. Increase of permeability corresponds to growth of the amount of unsaturated fatty acids. The changes in the fatty acids composition of lipids in the cells of the soil micromites, I'm saying that wrong, display their adaptation to adverse impact of the substances studied, MGHPs and something else. Thiouid glycol enhances synthesis of polysaccharides and pigments. I read that as bad. I don't know exactly how bad, but bad. Apologies that I don't have a deeper understanding of the particular scientific terms there used. But to me, that's not saying everything grows back and everything's hunky-dory. It doesn't say that. So here is a 200-mile radius of East Palestine Village. And see the little cutout there? That's us. That's me. And here's the most productive farmland. The lower map shows the most productive farmland in the U.S., right? And I mean, it's certainly not all of that, but it's a large swath of it, right? If you look at the two things, here is a better map of the impacted area with where you can see city names. So Ottawa is also included, New York, Toronto, Ohio, as far as Kentucky, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Arkansas, Missouri, Iowa, Wisconsin. They're in between the red and the yellow ring. So that's outside of 200 miles. Chicago, Toronto, New York, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky, North Carolina, Virginia, and a bunch of other, Rhode Island, it looks like, are all within the 200-mile mark. I don't know exactly if this will impact. Here's Empress, and they say here the prevailing winds are blowing it, northern winds forcing it to New York and up to England. So I don't know if it blows out and Canada gets lucky. I'm not sure. And I don't know if it's lucky if all of this toxic gas gets blown out to sea. Like, that's not great either, right? Here is DC Drano. He says Indiana and Kentucky water supplies are now affected. So that's 240 miles. It's a very big disaster, probably probably worse than Chernobyl. If you're comparing Chernobyl, and if you look at this as toxic as nuclear, it might be more impactful. Because if it gets if it's in the water, and it looks like it's in the water, that's very, very bad. Abby says, this is extremely concerning to anyone living in or near the yellow area. The toxic waste from the derailment near East Palestine has already leaked into the Ohio River, which provides water to 5 million people. So that's not good. That's not great, right? And so, yowza. Here's Citizen Free Press. They say dead fish are being pulled from the rivers outside East Palestine, Ohio, excuse me. The trucks doing the work are labeled EnviroScience, an Ohio-based company that provides time-sensitive solutions to environmental challenges. Yikes. Yowza, right? Like, that's scary stuff, I think. Collins says another train derails in Houston, Texas area. Officials claim hazardous materials were on board. And there's also another one in South Carolina. So like I said, trains derail, but the likelihood of, well, this person I think is going to say this here, the odds of 3 trains all carrying hazardous payloads derailing within a week of each other are about as good as Joe Biden winning an honest presidential election. Irregular warfare, is that what's going on? If you poison the water supply for 5 million people, more than that, 5 million, there's probably, well, how many people in those states that I named? Ohio, West Virginia, North Carolina, et cetera, right? Like that's a lot of people, right? So this one, that's why 5 million. That tweet said 5 million people. That's why I thought 5 million, but probably more, right? I don't know. Scary stuff. And I don't know how you protect against that, really, right? So if it's a regular warfare, it seems to be very effective. Not very good, because people don't one, believe you're at war, and two, if you did convince somebody that you were at war, you wouldn't convince the right person, because John Tory is going to say, you know what, the most important thing, we got to pass this budget. And Doug Ford's going to say, we got to get healthcare fixed. And Justin Trudeau is going to say, we've got to implement communism. Like, they've got different priorities, those guys. So DC Drano again says, once you learn BlackRock, Vanguard, and JP Morgan are the biggest stockholders of Norfolk Southern, the railway, the train operator that crashed in Ohio, then you realize why there's been a major media blackout on the toxic chemical disaster. Can't risk losing that ad revenue. Yeah, so that's very, very, I mean, that's like owning the place, right? If you're keeping the place afloat with ads, yeah, that's pretty wild. Hello, everyone. Thanks for watching. Check out CanadaPoly.com or CanadaPoly2.locals.com for full episodes of Canada Poly Daily, looking at Canadian politics from a Canadian point of view. Thanks for watching, everyone, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.